So I want to talk a little bit about building chords out of the half-whole diminished scale. The half-whole diminished scale is primarily associated with dominant 7 chords. The example we'll use here is based on a G7, so G half-whole diminished scale, which sounds like this. So to be used with a dominant 7th chord, that means it's got to have the 3rd in the 7th in it. Of course, the root. So there's the root right there. If I scale upwards, that takes me to the 3rd, so I have the 3rd. And of course, if I go down a step from the root here, that's my 7th, or I can scale up to the 7th. So there's the flatted 7th of the chord, there's the 3rd of the chord, there's the flatted 7th again. So the scale itself gives me the 3rd and flatted 7th. Now what we'll look at is what else is in the scale that we can add to our 3rd and 7th. But first of all, I just want to make the point that if I just play the skeletal G7, root 7, 3, my scale is a perfectly legitimate sound against that structure. But let's look at what else is involved in the scale that we can add to our chord. First of all, again, going back to the root, if I go up a half step, I get the flatted 9th. So I can take my 7th and 3rd, find a flatted 9th that fits in nicely, like right here. Now I have G7 flat 9. So there's another legitimate chord structure that we can use our scale with. G7 flat 9. All right, let's go a little further in the scale. Root, flat 9. My next note is sharp 9. So now I can add sharp 9 to my basic structure of 7 and 3. Now I keep going. Root, flat 9, sharp 9. My next note is the 3rd. Following the 3rd would be sharp 11. So I can move that sharp 11 over to the B string, add it to my basic flat 7 and 3 structure, and get this chord, G7 sharp 11. So yet another chord sound that I can use my half-whole diminished against. Right? Now if I keep going, my next note is the 5th. So, you know, again, I can use that scale sound against a plain old G7 with a natural 5th. My next note in the scale would give me the 13. So I can use half-whole diminished against the G13. The next note is the 7th. We've already tackled that. And the next note is the root. So there's the possible notes that we can add to our basic G7 out of the G half-whole diminished scale. And again, to review, I've got the sharp 11, got the 5th, got the 13, also have the flat 9, and I have the sharp 9, and I can use any combination of those chords. In other words, I could have, or those notes. In other words, I can have the 13 and add the sharp 9, or I can have the 13 and add the flat 9, or I can have the natural 5th and add the sharp or flat 9 on top of that. Or I can have the sharp 11, add the flat 9, or the sharp 9. It's a little bit of a stretch, but I can also do something like that. So a good exercise is to take your 7 and 3 and just go up the scale, adding the other scale notes to this sort of core structure of the 7th and 3rd. So I might do something like this. Now, one other thing that you might want to try to do is invert that 7 and 3. In other words, take your 3rd here and put it down below the 7th. So now I have 3, 7. and try the same exercise. So moving the scale up from the 7th while I retain these 2 core notes, I have 7 root, using the open G string for the root, flat 9, sharp 9, and of course I have the 3rd again. Following that, I'm going to have sharp 11, 5, 13, and then I just have 7th again, followed by root. So play around with that idea. Get very comfortable with finding all these various voicings that pair with the G7 half-whole diminished scale.